What made you realize you need that distance from the industry?
Life.
Yes. Good answer.
I was really busy with my life, and
Yes.
I just didn't find the time to tell a story that didn't equal the excitement of my life.
There was a time when Deborah Winger seemed impossible to ignore. Her face was everywhere. Directors wanted her, critics praised her, and audiences couldn't take their eyes off her. In the early 1980s, she wasn't just another Hollywood actress. She was one of the most respected performers of her generation, earning award nominations and starring in some of the biggest films of the decade. Yet what makes Deborah Winger's story so fascinating isn't the fame she achieved. It's the fact that she eventually walked away from it. Long before Hollywood knew her name, Deborah's life looked nothing like a movie script. She was born in Ohio in 1955 into a working-class Jewish family. Her father worked in the meatpacking business, while her mother managed an office. There were no connections to the entertainment industry, no glamorous childhood surrounded by movie stars, and certainly no signs that she would one day become one of Hollywood's most talked-about actresses. In fact, she wasn't even pursuing acting when she was young. She was academically gifted, graduating high school at just 15 years old before enrolling in college to study criminology. Her future seemed headed in an entirely different direction. But life has a strange way of changing course when you least expect it. During her late teens, Deborah traveled abroad and spent time exploring the world beyond California. When she returned home, she took a regular job at an amusement park. Then, in a moment that would alter everything, she suffered a devastating accident. After falling from a truck, she experienced a serious cerebral hemorrhage that left her partially blind and partially paralyzed. For nearly a year, doctors weren't sure how much of her health she would recover. Imagine being 18 years old and suddenly facing the possibility that your future may never look the same. Confined to a hospital bed, unable to see properly, Deborah found herself confronting questions most people never have to face at such a young age. It was during those difficult months that she made a promise to herself. If she recovered, she would stop wasting time wondering what life might be, and instead chase something that truly excited her. She decided she would become an actress. Against the odds, her health slowly returned. Her vision improved, her body healed, and she kept the promise she had made. Moving toward Los Angeles, Deborah began appearing in commercials, taking whatever opportunities she could find. At first, she was simply another hopeful performer trying to get noticed in a city full of dreamers. Yet there was something different about her. She wasn't polished in the traditional Hollywood sense. She had a distinctive voice, an unconventional presence, and an honesty that made her stand out from the crowd. Small television roles followed, including appearances on popular shows of the era, but Deborah knew she was capable of much more. That breakthrough finally arrived when producers began casting a new film called Urban Cowboy. Hundreds of actresses wanted the role, but Deborah brought something the others couldn't. She felt real. She wasn't trying to be glamorous. She wasn't trying to be perfect. She simply brought authenticity to every scene. When she won the role, few could have predicted that it would change her life forever. But as cameras rolled, Hollywood was about to discover a new star, one who would soon become impossible to ignore. Urban Cowboy became a major box office success and turned both Deborah Winger and John Travolta into household names. Audiences connected with her because she felt authentic. She wasn't playing a fantasy. She felt like a real person with flaws, emotions, and contradictions. At a time when Hollywood often preferred polished perfection, Deborah brought something raw and unpredictable to the screen. That unpredictability quickly became her trademark. If Urban Cowboy introduced Deborah Winger to Hollywood, the years that followed transformed her into one of the most respected actresses in America. Almost overnight, she became the kind of performer directors fought to cast. But unlike many rising stars who carefully crafted a public image, Deborah seemed completely uninterested in becoming what Hollywood expected. She wasn't trying to be glamorous. She wasn't trying to be agreeable. She was focused on one thing: the work. The momentum continued in 1982 when she starred opposite Richard Gere in An Officer and a Gentleman. The film became one of the biggest hits of the decade, earning over $100 million and turning into a cultural phenomenon. For most actors, this would have been the perfect experience, but behind the scenes, things were far from ideal. Deborah and Richard Gere reportedly struggled to connect during production. Years later, she would famously describe him as a brick wall. Yet somehow that tension created a strange kind of chemistry on screen. Their relationship felt complicated, believable, and emotionally charged. The performance earned Deborah her first Academy Award nomination and confirmed that she was no longer simply a rising star. She had become one of Hollywood's elite actresses. Then came the role that many considered the defining performance of her career. In 1983, she starred in Terms of Endearment, a deeply emotional drama that explored love, family, and loss. Deborah played Emma Horton, a woman facing the painful realities of life while struggling to hold her family together. It was the kind of role that demanded complete emotional honesty, and she delivered one of the most powerful performances of the decade. Critics were stunned. Audiences were moved. Once again, she received an Academy Award nomination. Yet while her career was reaching incredible heights, another reputation was beginning to follow her. Hollywood executives, producers, and some members of the press started describing Deborah as difficult. The label would stay with her for years, but the reality was more complicated. Deborah wasn't difficult because she arrived late or refused to work. She was difficult because she challenged people. She questioned scripts. She disagreed with directors. She demanded that scenes feel truthful. In an industry built on power and hierarchy, that attitude often made people uncomfortable. Ironically, many of the very qualities that made her performances extraordinary were the same qualities that caused friction behind the scenes. Deborah cared deeply about every project she accepted. She refused to treat acting like a business transaction. For her, every role mattered. Every scene mattered. Every decision mattered. While audiences saw an actress at the top of her game, Hollywood was beginning to see something else. A talented star who wasn't willing to play by the rules. And as the decade continued, that growing tension would eventually change the course of her entire career. By the mid-1990s, Deborah Winger faced a crossroads few Hollywood stars would dare to choose. While many actors dedicate their lives to maintaining their spotlight for as long as possible, Winger began to question whether all the accolades were truly worth it. After more than a decade of consistently appearing in critically acclaimed films, receiving Oscar nominations, and becoming one of America's most respected actresses, she felt increasingly alienated from the very industry that had made her famous. The big roles no longer held the same excitement. The meetings, the promotional campaigns, and the pressures of box office sales made her feel like she was living someone else's life. In 1990, Deborah starred in The Sheltering Sky, an ambitious project filmed in the harsh desert. The film showed her willingness to take on the most challenging artistic endeavors, but it also made her realize that life outside of the film set was becoming increasingly important. In the following years, she continued to appear in several notable works such as Shadowlands, where her performance was so profound that it earned her a third Oscar nomination. However, even critical acclaim was no longer enough to keep her in the industry. Hollywood was changing. Studios were increasingly focused on blockbuster projects, big franchises, and stars willing to conform to the system's rules. Actresses over 40 were often seen as less commercially valuable, regardless of their talent. Deborah saw this clearly. She understood that she could continue to fight to stay in the game, but she also understood that the price would increase. Therefore, in 1995, she made a decision that surprised all of Hollywood. No press conference, no shocking announcement, no tearful farewell. Deborah Winger simply stepped out of the race. She married actor and director Arliss Howard, moved to a peaceful ranch in New York State, and spent most of her time with her family. Instead of rushing from film set to film set, she took her children to school, cared for relatives, and enjoyed the simple things she had almost never had the chance to experience before. For many, it was the mysterious disappearance of a star. But for Deborah Winger, it was the first time she truly lived the way she wanted. Many Hollywood stories end in a fall. A famous star fades into oblivion, roles disappear, and ultimately only memories of past glory remain. But Deborah Winger's story took a completely different turn. After years away from the spotlight, she didn't return to prove anything to Hollywood. She returned because she wanted to. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, Deborah began reappearing in smaller projects, films and plays that truly interested her. Gone with the high-profile advertising campaigns and the pressure of hundreds of millions of dollars in box office revenue. She chose stage plays, independent films, and roles that demanded more emotional depth than glamour. Interestingly, once she stopped chasing fame, she seemed to rediscover her love for acting. In 2002, the documentary Searching for Deborah Winger was released. The film wasn't just about her. It reflected how Hollywood treated actresses as they passed their youth. Surprisingly, Deborah became a symbol of a much larger debate than her own career. In the years that followed, she continued to appear in critically acclaimed projects such as Dawn Anna, Rachel Getting Married, Broadway stage productions, and later the television series The Ranch. Remarkably, she never tried to become a younger version of herself. Deborah embraced age, accepted life's changes, and brought all that experience into the characters she portrayed. While many actors spend their careers fighting against time, she allowed time to become a part of her art. Looking back on the entire journey, what truly happened to Deborah Winger wasn't a fading career. She wasn't defeated by Hollywood, nor did she disappear because of failure. Conversely, she proactively left when she realized her life was more important than what the film industry could offer. She refused to trade her family for a few more successful films. She refused to become the person Hollywood wanted her to be, just to maintain her position at the top. And having lived the life she chose, she returned to the profession on her own terms. Perhaps that is why Deborah Winger is still remembered today. Not just for her 3 Oscar nominations or her outstanding performances, but because she did something very few stars have the courage to do: live her own life instead of living for the image others expected of her. It's not a story of fame fading away. It's a story of freedom.